Hi guys, it's Dale here from Elephant Memories. In today's Resin 101 video, we're going to talk about essential epoxy resin safety. If you're thinking about starting to work with epoxy resin as a hobby or a business, it's a lot of fun. With a few precautions, you can thoroughly enjoy this medium and keep yourself as well as others safe. I'm going to touch on a few things to be aware of and go a little bit deeper into personal protection. You'll want to be aware and keep kids and animals away from your epoxy workspace. Higher quality epoxies generally have low or no VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. Certain animals, like reptiles, amphibians, and birds, are especially sensitive to any type of chemicals or fumes. Even extreme low levels can easily kill them. Don't take any chances. Keep them away, and all animals away from your work area. Children under 12 years age should also be kept away from your epoxy crafting area. You don't want them accidentally touching or ingesting any uncured epoxy. If you're working with children over 12, you'll need to make sure that they have proper fitting PPE, or personal protective equipment. Always work in a well-ventilated area. Check to make sure the epoxy you're working with has low or no VOCs. These chemicals are emitted as a gas from solid or liquid, like epoxy, during their chemical reaction when being mixed with a hardener. These can give off fumes that some people can have bad reactions to. Open windows if possible to help circulate and exchange the air. Air purifiers are a good alternative if you're working in a small area. You can even circulate air by using a few box fans that you've attached HVAC air filters to. Not only will this move air, but it will also collect some dust along the way. Be sure to have a binder with printed SDS sheets of all the materials you're working with. SDS, or safety data sheets, can be usually found on manufacturer's website. The reason why you want a printed copy is just in case of accidental ingestion, respiration or skin reaction, or any other emergency. If you need medical assistance, take this binder with you. It makes it easier for the medical professionals to look at the chemical lists to expedite your treatment. You can always just take a folder with the specific materials that you're working with as well. Without proper precautions, it can be easy to get epoxy on your face. For instance, say you get a spot of epoxy on your gloved hand, which happens all the time. Then a stray piece of hair falls in your face, or you got this uncontrollable urge to rub your eyes, which happens. Well, if you don't have your goggles on and you just rubbed your eyes, you now have epoxy in your eyes. While you're using your epoxy, you put your glasses on. Easy to go over glasses or without. Then you still have those urges, but your eyes are protected. You really only need a few things to keep you safe. Being aware of these situations in advance helps you to avoid them altogether. Let's talk about proper PPE. PPE, or personal protective equipment, is very important for a safe and stress-free workspace. Let's take some time to go over these. Chemical respirators. A chemical respirator is different from a dust mask. Respirators used for chemical fumes will usually have cartridges that you periodically have to change. More expensive ones have powered air purifiers. Choosing the right respirator is a personal choice. Ask yourself, are you using a quality epoxy with low or no VOCs? What is the size of your crafting or workspace? Do you have windows? How are you moving or exchanging the air in your space? My studio is located in an old mill building. The floor to ceiling is about 12 feet. I don't have windows that I can open, but the walls don't go all the way to the ceiling. We have several box fans suspended from the ceiling to move air into the hall. Dust masks. Dust masks should not be used when working with liquid epoxy. However, they are good when you have to finish your project by sanding. Be sure to wear your safety goggles when sanding too. Work aprons. When working epoxy, you're basically working with liquid plastic. Standard cloth aprons offer no protection from the epoxy. To protect your clothes and reduce exposure to your skin, I recommend a heavy canvas, or even better yet, waxed canvas or leather aprons. Safety goggles. Safety goggles are very important to protect your eyes. Splashes can happen when measuring, mixing, or pouring. As I've mentioned before, they will prevent you from accidentally rubbing your eyes with epoxy-covered gloves. Epoxy in your eyes is very serious. You will need to seek immediate medical assistance. Be sure to bring your SDS binder with you. Gloves. Never use latex gloves when working with epoxy. Latex can allow certain chemicals to pass through to your skin. Instead, you want a chemical resistant material such as nitrile. I will often use my nitrile gloves and then put some work gloves that are coated in nitrile or even silicone over for double protection. Always have alcohol or baby wipes on hand. I will try my best to keep epoxy off my gloves to reduce the potential skin contact, but it still always happens, especially when you're mixing. So I will be wiping my gloves off with baby wipes the entire time I'm working on each project. In this way, if you do end up itching your face, you will be less likely to be covered in epoxy. Do you know the best way to remove your gloves? First, you're going to take those baby wipes and you're going to wipe your gloves down and get as much epoxy off as possible. Again, we're trying to avoid skin contact. After that, you want to lift without touching your skin, inside out, and pull. Now, with the other hand, go underneath, lift and pull. Proper footwear. Last but not least are your feet. I'm constantly wearing comfortable Crocs if I'm not planning on heavy woodworking. The problem with this is that my feet are not protected from spills. Be sure to wear shoes, or better yet, boots that completely cover your feet. other safety precautions do you want to take? Great question. We've talked about PPE and SDS sheets, but there are a few other things that you should have on hand. Not only is epoxy resin a chemical, but when you mix it with a hardener, it naturally heats up. This is called an exothermic reaction. If epoxy touches your skin, you want to clean it immediately. Wipe it right away with those baby wipes you have on hand. Clean your gloves, remove them, and wash with soap and running water. It's also said that baking soda and vinegar work well too. Disposal. When you're done with your project, it's time to clean your work area and tools. I use silicone mats and tools for all of my epoxy projects. Epoxy doesn't stick to silicone once it's dry, so if you take care of these, you can use them over and over again. Never pour epoxy down the drain. Never throw your gloves, wipes, rags, or anything covered in epoxy in the trash. Instead, clean your tools off, such as a silicone stir stick, with a rag and denatured alcohol. Leave any leftover epoxy in your silicone mixing cup until dry. Wipe your gloves off with baby wipes, then remove from your hands. Then take a clean baby wipe and wipe your hands. Now you can remove your goggles and your respirator if you have one on. Leave everything on the silicone mat to dry overnight. The next day, place all of your trash in a bucket. When your bucket is filled, including empty epoxy and hardener containers, bring this to your local dump. They should have a hazardous waste disposal site. Instead of throwing away any wasted or dry epoxy, save it for other projects. The drips can be quite beautiful. Essentially, you have hardened plastic. I will use them in fairy house making projects or sun catchers. I've seen people use the drips on greeting cards. They really do look like water drops. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. Epoxy resin is a fun and amazing medium to work with in an infinite number of uses. If you're taking one of my in-studio classes, please be sure to leave a comment below as a record that you've completed the required safety video. And I'll see you soon.